Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Southern Reads Podcast, the show where I talk about books and only books and everything book related. Today, I am joined by Mr. Maxim Langstaff. Maxim is a Grammy and Emmy nominated writer, producer, and author whose creative and editorial work has reached millions of people worldwide. He is recognized for his innovative vision and exceptional versatility and reach. He holds an honorary doctorate from Connecticut College and a degree in anthropology. He's also a member of the Writers Guild and past recipient at the Breedlove Writers Conference. He's produced the multimedia making of Sergeant Pepper with Sir George Martin and wrote and produced the most complete filmed history of the Beatles through the eyes of the man who signed them and produced their work. A part of Max's film became the award-winning PBS series Soundbreaking, and now he is known for his work with John Denver. He created and produced the highly acclaimed wildlife concerts, spawning the highest rating music program in cable TV history upon broadcast. And he's now the three-time Boston marathoner, and he lives in North Carolina. And he has come out with his first novel titled Sasket, Sasket,
Susket. Sasket. Susket. Think of it that way.
Sasket, and he's here today, and he's going to talk a little bit more about Sasket and talk to us a little bit more about his writing career as a whole. So, Maxim, thank you so much for taking time to come on the podcast today. I'm really looking forward to chatting with you, and welcome to Southern Reads.
Thank you. This is great. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
So, you've had a very profound career in the entertainment business. You've been doing writing for decades and you have been doing it for a very long time. What made you want to kind of transition from working on more Grammy and Emmy nominated stuff to more of the author route?
Well, you get to a certain age, you get beat up enough, you get tired of getting beat up. But it's for every project that someone who's in the entertainment business does, whether it's a CD or a TV show or a film or something like that. There's an awful lot of stuff that you work on that never gets to where it needs to go. And it's an exhausting business. It's a big burnout business. And to me, the magic of my novel, which I'm very excited about, is that I was able to, you can engage in the creative process and nobody can stop you. Nobody's going to say, well, you can't do that, or we don't have the money, or you can just write it. You can get it out. And at that point, then it goes out into the world. And as John Denver, who I work with, used to say, he used to say, John, how do you know you've written a good song? He'd say, when it becomes yours. So it's the same thing with a book. I wrote the book, it's my book, but once the book is out, it came out in April. It's been released. It's done very well. It got to number one on Amazon bestseller. It's a number one bestseller for Barnes and Noble. I had no idea, but that tells to me that people are reading it, they're enjoying it, and now it's their book. It's out there. It's the reader's book, not the author's book.
So with Saskia, tell me a little bit about the backstory behind this fiction novel and kind of where did your inspiration for it come from?
Well, it's interesting. I didn't set out to write this novel. It didn't come from a place of ambition where, oh, I'm going to write a book and I want to write a book about this. I mean, that's sort of the pop culture thinking that people tend to have about these things. It was an accident. I didn't really intend to. I didn't grow up, for example, having an ambition to be the next Herman Melville or Mark Twain. Apparently I can write well. But then I thought everybody did. I just, and the thing is, when you're younger, you tend to be passionate about those things you're good at. And I'm pretty good at writing. And so I've been writing, as you say, my whole career and my whole life. And I was writing a series of essays. I was living in Maine at the time, in the Maine woods, in a cabin. And I had free time for the first time in my life in a long time. And I just started writing, just sort of no particular direction or anything. And those early writings became a part of what then later became Susket. I had a dog. His name was Chemo, and he's very prominent in the book. He's the same dog that I had. He's a real dog. And that's a whole interesting thing, the difference between fiction and nonfiction. But the book just sort of happened. It unfolded over time. And when I was in California working, I drove across the country with my dog. That was a blast. And I was writing as I was going, and again, nothing was really attached to a form yet. And I was in the Santa Monica Mountains in California, and I had this line came to me. I mean, just out of nowhere, the ether, and it was sometimes the truth is best left unknown, and that is really the sort of the tagline of the book. And you can see it on the cover. It's thematically in the book. And once I had that line came to me, the whole book just showed up in my head, and it became a question of trying to write it down and articulate what had sort of come forward. So that's really how the book unfolded, and it's a very messy answer, but it was a messy process.
You had mentioned about, trying to balance fiction and nonfiction, and you kind of used your own pet dog in your book and kind of the character stems on that. How much did you want to be fiction versus nonfiction?
It depends upon your perspective about fiction and nonfiction. I've become convinced. For the reader, they decide I want to read a novel. It's a book of fiction, and Susket is. However, for a writer, it's a very different perspective because as a writer, you can't write about what you don't know. You just can't. And so, to some extent, in terms of the internal um, lives of the characters in the book and some of the places and the different things that take place are born from my personal experience or people I've known. So, some of the real people are in the book, and there are some real historical characters like Dr. Margaret Mead, who was a person I knew. A few other people as well. I did not know Teddy Roosevelt. I want to admit that I didn't know him. He's before my time. But I think that you write as a writer about stuff you know and you connect to and things that matter to you, even if it's fantasy, even if it's crazy stuff. It's stuff that's going on in your head. So the book, I wrote the book I didn't really think about fiction versus nonfiction, but I have to say, I think about the best compliment I could possibly get for the book, and I have gotten it. It's just, boy, I can't tell if this is fiction or nonfiction. I mean, isn't that what you want if you're a novel writer? You want it to be so real for people that they think it's real. And I really did. I think effectively. I hope I did effectively blur the lines between the two. It is a book of fiction, but it is a sort of how would I guess you could look at something like Jurassic Park, which people know from the movies, but it was originally a book by Michael Crichton, a wonderful book. Book's better than the movies. And the book is a what if book. In other words, the science in this book of Jurassic Park is real. I mean, we can do that. We can do what he has in the book about retrieving the DNA from all that amber. We can do that. We've been able to do that for years. But so that's true. That's nonfiction in a sense. It's science. The fictional part is the story that he built around that, and that's what Suscat is too. It's a what if book, sort of a cross between Jurassic Park and maybe the Da Vinci Code, because it's a mystery and a search for something, but answers. But I think that the science, and there is some science in this book. Obviously, it's dealing with quite an enigma. Is real and plausible, and so it's very similar that way.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point to kind of focus in on too about um what's real and not real because Jurassic Park I think is a really good example because everything in that movie when it comes to dinosaurs is realistic. That's what we've always known them as. That's what we've always seen dinosaurs as. But the fiction part, of course, would be the human experience being there.
Right, the
There
story,
wouldn't be
the story,
um
the narrative.
so so we wouldn't obviously we wouldn't have human civilization and Homo sapiens be there, so and have modern technology. So that's kind of where the fiction part comes in, but like the kind of the nature aspect and dinosaur design itself, that's based off of real known history that's been documented.
Right.
So
Thanks. Yeah.
what I really like about some of the things that you have also wrote, you kind of have a wide range of different kind of works that you've worked on. You actually worked with Sir George Martin and something documented for the Beatles. How when you're writing for say for like a documentary like that compared to maybe something else, is writing basically the same across all platforms, like whether you're writing for a TV show, for a movie, or documentary, or a book, or is there some differences in those?
There are differences. So yes and no is the answer. I could leave it at that and leave you hanging, but I'll tell you why. You have to have your craft. You have to be able to write. You have to have an understanding of verbiage and words and sentences and metaphor and nouns, verbs, adjectives, adverbs. I mean, you have to know how to write. You have to learn that skill, which you learn starting, I think, in kindergarten. And so whether you're a fiction writer or a nonfiction writer, you have to be able to articulate whatever you're trying to articulate through words. And so you need to have a command of that. And for me, uh, my love for words came mostly from my work in the theater when I was younger. And I did a lot of Shakespeare. And I just fell in love with words because Shakespeare uses words as almost substantive pieces. They're not just used as descriptors. As far as a passion for language is important, and you need to love language. You need to love shaping language. And writing is a very powerful art form because you're in control of everything. You can decide who lives and dies and where that goes, etc. As far as the difference between writing for fiction or nonfiction, for example, doing a documentary or writing about somebody or something like that, or if you're writing a book about, it could be cooking, it could be a sports book, it could be a self-help book, which tend to be the books that get on the bestseller list the longest, and that's the larger part of the book market. Writing a novel is much more difficult. As an example, if you have an idea to write a nonfiction book, you can submit your idea on a couple pages to a publisher and they'll take it if they want to take it. They'll look at it. If you're writing a novel, if you're writing a book of fiction, they won't even look at your book until it's done, completely done. So it's a much harder sort of journey for a writer to write fiction on some level. And the difference really from a writing standpoint is, and where they are different as opposed to being the same, the craft is the same, but the difference is when you're writing a book of nonfiction, you have an idea in your head of what you want to say and where you want to go with that book. So I'm writing a book about, how to ride a bicycle. So I know I have to cover this, and this on how to, and so you lay it out. It's a very much more sort of a left brain thing. And it's born from ambition. In a sense, you want to accomplish something, you want to get something, you want to write about this, and you want to say it well, et cetera, et cetera. When you're writing fiction, it's a very different process. So you're very much in control in a nonfiction book, and you're controlling every step of the way. Every aspect of it is very important that you control it because you want to say what you want to say efficiently. In a novel, the writing process is much more of a creative process. And that creative process means that you may start out writing about something, a chapter. My favorite part of writing is this. You're writing away, and all of a sudden, you're going off into left field, and you have no idea how you got there and why you're writing about what you're writing when you're writing it. This is why we need editors, of course. But the joy in you find your uh, 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 the book itself, the journey itself of writing actually makes the book go the direction it goes in. You can't control it 100%. And if you do try to control it 100%, you're not probably have a very good book. But it's magical because I could wake up the next I could you get these inspirations and you wake up the next day and you read what you wrote and you think, who wrote that? You just can't believe you did it. It's really fun. And it's the other someone approached me the other day at a book signing and they asked me, how do you write a book or something along those lines? And, how do you get started? And I said, you just do it. I said, don't wait for inspiration. You can't wait till you're inspired to write a book to start writing a book. The inspiration comes from the process itself. So as you're writing it, as you're applying your craft, you will be inspired. Things will inspire you. And you'll have times when you're writing when you can't even write fast enough. It's just pouring out of you or through you is really how I look at it. It's very exciting, but it's a very different process from writing a book of fiction. So if I'm doing a documentary and I'm writing about the Beatles or a subject matter, I have a point I want to make, something I want to say. I have a beginning, a middle, and an end, and I say it. You're in control of every aspect of it. It's not a particular, there's not a lot of magic in it. It's really mechanical.
One of the things that you kind of focus on in your work is actually kind of cryptid and kind of mythological creatures as well. Um, What's that research and what's that writing process been like when you're writing for kind of for mythical creatures?
Well, it's interesting. Very interesting for me. My personal journey on this subject of Sasquatch, or some people would call it Bigfoot, but they're actually not the same thing. That's another conversation, perhaps. Anyway, when I started the book, I came across this enigma and I thought, well, this would make a great device for the book. People will like it. It'll be fun. It'll be fun. People love fantasy. And this is a beloved fantasy. I mean, people love Sasquatch. It's all over everything. It's everywhere. Everywhere you go, everywhere you look, there's a Bigfoot thing, a poster, a mug, or a t-shirt, whatever. It's so weird
Mm,
in places where you just can't believe it. So I thought, well, I'll have fun with this, and just do a sort of a device. And then I started to do some research, and not the pop culture stuff that you see all over the place, but I went to see if is there any real scientific research for this? Is there any historical data that says, something about this that goes beyond Harry and the Hendersons? And much to my shock and amazement, there was. And I was fascinated by it. Russian scientists, British scientists, American scientists, French scientists. People have really studied this, serious people. So I'm reading along, and I'm a skeptic. It's a fun thing, but come on, it can't be for real. And then I thought, well, I can disprove this. It doesn't take a lot to disprove this. This is a hoax, right? And
mm,
as I began to think about it, I began to realize, well, actually, it's harder to prove that it's a hoax than to prove that it's real. And what do I mean by that? It's incredibly simple when you think about it. To believe this is a hoax or that Sasquatch is all just made up nonsense, you have to believe that there's been somebody wandering around in the woods for 500 years, dressed up in a monkey costume, hoping somebody's going to come out in the middle of nowhere and find him. And what's the likelihood they're not going to shoot them? Not very good. So the whole premise, and then there'd have to be a conspiracy of a global conspiracy on a scale that would have cost hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars. Nobody's ever revealed it. And um, it's just not plausible and so then you start to ask yourself, and then looking at all the science of it, I started to think, well, is it plausible scientifically? And what I discovered was it is plausible. It's not just a silly myth. And then I started to think about, well, what if then there are two questions. Is it a biological creature? Is it biologically real? Could be. We'll find out at some point, maybe. Hopefully, for the creature's sake, we don't. But and then I think, well, if it's not real, then what are we dealing with here? Well, obviously, for 1,000 years, human beings are cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, and we're all nut crazy. And then the question is, what are we nut crazy about? Why is it we so love this creature? Why is it we're so obsessed with having this creature in our lives? And to me, that's also a mystery. That's fascinating to me. What is it that is so compelling about this particular cryptid, as they call it, cryptid? Um, it's the most beloved cryptid of all, more so than the Loch Ness Monster and aliens and all that kind of stuff. And something like nearly 50% of the American people alone um, either believe Sasquatch exists or want to believe it exists. That's a lot of people. That's millions and millions and millions of people. So what is that? And of the people who have seen it or claim to have seen it or seen some sign of it, that dates back all the way to Alexander the Great when he was conquering all over the Mediterranean. Um, uh, they have reports in the journals of those conquests of discovering these wild men in the wilderness who were in those days it was much more forested, who were not quite human, and they were covered in hair. I mean, what is that? Um, I don't think you got to realize that the word Bigfoot didn't come into our vernacular until 1958 or 1959. So prior to that, there was no Bigfoot. It was all Sasquatch, and it was mostly, as we know it today, North America, understood among the native Indian populations, etc. And believe it or not, here's another one that's really, really shocked me. There are more than 40 different Indian language groups, Native American language groups, completely different languages. They all have a word for this creature, and they're a different word for this creature, and yet they're all describing exactly the same thing. What is that? Someone needs to make sense out of that. So this is my process of discovery, and to me that was the fun. Was getting into the science of this and looking at this and going, well, okay, well let's play with this. Let's see how real it really is. And the further I dug, the further deeper I got, the realer it got. And that's a good word. And I think it just was. I'm stunned. So by the end of my journey of the book, I my certainty became has become less certain. And that's one reason why, which is extremely rare in a novel, I have a bibliography at the end of my novel. People go, "You don't have to put bibliographies in novels. Why did you do that?" I did that because I thought for people who are interested, that enjoy and love the book, and they want to know more, well, why don't I share with them my source material so they can actually go see where I sourced my information from? And it was really a service to the reader and for people to have more fun and go explore on their own. So that was my journey with Bigfoot and Sasquatch and sort of how that all came about. But the difference between the two, I mentioned that before, I'll just say quickly, it's like the difference between the teddy bear and a bear. Bigfoot is a teddy bear. It's silly. It's a human construct. We have Harry and the Hendersons. Remember that movie years ago? And Bigfoot shows up everywhere, and everybody loves Bigfoot. And Bigfoot jokes, Bigfoot bumper stickers, Bigfoot hats, shirts, mugs, you name it. That's just we just made that stuff up for whatever reason. We like it, we want it, we need it, we have it. But the bear, the real biological, potentially biological, whatever it is, creature that may or may not be out there, is a very, very different thing. You would not give your child a bear. You'd give your child a teddy bear, and we love our teddy bears. So we as humans have a way of taking something that we doesn't quite work for us or doesn't quite fit for us or makes us nervous, and we turn it into something that we can like. And so there's human beings just we do this because we're storytellers. So Bigfoot is really the teddy bear to the bear, and the bear is Sasquatch. And it's a different conversation you have to start having. That's why when I wrote the book, most of the stories, virtually all the stories that I found on encounters and episodes regarding Bigfoot or Sasquatch predate 1958. I wanted to see the information I could find about this subject matter that predates when it became this big pop culture silliness where you can't discern anything from anything. So that was really my approach. I mean, I'm going to ask you this question. Do you believe in Santa Claus? Of course you believe in Santa Claus. How do I know you believe in Santa Claus? Say, I don't believe in Santa Claus. That's ridiculous. Well, why is it every Christmas we spend billions of dollars celebrating Santa Claus and everything Santa Claus related? Either human beings are completely off the wall or we just operate from belief, not fact. I think we do. Look at our politics. But I think that we operate from belief, not fact. Human beings are storytellers. We are naturally storytellers. It's the thing that makes us unique. And so we make stuff up. You know, Santa Claus has a basis in reality, not remotely what we think of today, Santa Claus. However, we do spend billions of dollars every year promoting, celebrating something that if you actually ask someone point blank, an adult, is Santa Claus real? They say, no, of course not. Then what are we doing? I mean, it's a fascinating, talk about fascinating anthropological sort of essay on human beings, what we do as human beings. And that's why storytelling and books and films, all that stuff is so important to us because we love storytelling. We create reality based on our beliefs, not on facts.
Overall, when people hear your books and they read your books, what's the big main takeaway that you want readers to get when they read your books?
I hope a reader who reads my book comes away with some joy and fun, just fun counts, and then maybe just a small little scintilla of insight about themselves, about their relationships with other people, about their journey in their lives, and they can identify with the characters and you create a bridge of empathy. And I think that's very important. So it becomes their journey, not my journey. And I think that the book is really takes a look at man's broken relationship with nature and the natural world. That's the sort of intellectual spine in all this. And so I think and people will absorb that in the process of having fun with the characters and going through all of this. So that's really what it is.
So going forward, in the future, where would you like to take your writing career going forward?
It's interesting. I want to keep writing. I've got a couple more books, 3 or 4 projects that I have in my mind, in my head, and I wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and I start working on them in my head. And if I get enough sort of coherent thought going, I'll lean over and I have a pile of papers and a pen by my desk, by my bed, and 3 in the morning in the complete darkness, I'll scribble out something, and then the next day I'll put it in my pile of future stuff. Or um, if it's a big thought, I'll get up in the middle of the night and actually sit down in front of my computer and write until I'm exhausted. But yeah, I'm going to keep writing. I think that, and I hope, for example, Susket in particular, I'm interested in pursuing this as a film or a television series. And the reason is, it's very simple. Young people today tend to experience the world more visually than I did when I was growing up. Books were the center of things for us. Today, it's film and television for young people, or it's, TikTok or whatever the social media stuff, but it tends to be a visual medium. So if you really want to reach younger generations, you've got to find a way of articulating your story visually, not just on the page. So I'm pursuing right now. I'm in the process of reaching out to the powers that be in Hollywood and wherever to turn this into a limited series, for example, because I think it would lend itself to that.
Looking ahead, where are you currently working on any books right now that you are able to share on the podcast, or are you working on anything behind the scenes that will be coming out soon?
Yeah, I just did finished a book trailer for this book, and you can find it on the susketthebook.com website. And in 10 weeks, it's gotten over 1 million views. So that's really encouraging. I'm working on a sequel to this book. So you could say it'll be a series. Um, and I'm excited about that. I'm probably about 150 pages into that, and it's coming along. Um, and I've got some other book up project ideas that are when I finish that, I will start moving toward them.
Well, Maxim, thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to come on the podcast today to share your story and to share some of your work with my audience today. For anyone listening, if they are interested and wanting to check your books out, if they would like to just stay up to date about what you have going forward, where can they go to learn more information?
Well, you can get the book everywhere. You can get it on Amazon. You can get it on Barnes and Noble book sites. There's an audio book. There's a Nook. There's the ebook. There's a paperback, hardback. So any form you want it, you can get it on those places. We also have a website, which is a pretty rigorous website, which has some highlights of the book and some conversation. Your podcast will eventually be on that website. Looking forward to that. But it's susketthebook.com. It's SASQET, which is the title of the book, thebook.com. Susketthebook.com. If you go there, you can even sign up for more information about that. You can send me a note. I'd love to hear from readers, and they can also follow. We have on YouTube, we have a Susket. Uh, you could type in Susket the book or Susket the story. We have our own channel now on YouTube, and there's a series of podcasts that I have on my podcast, which is exploring how do you take a best-selling book and turn it into a film. And so we take the readers and the listeners on a journey of that process. And so we interview, directors and producers and managers and talent agents and casting directors and actors over time, and to sort of give everybody a chance to sort of see how it's done and actually participate in the process. So there's lots of ways to do that. If you go to just Susket the book or Susket, uh, just type it into Google, you'll find all kinds of places and sites to go to connected to the book and me.
And I will put all this information down in the description box below. So just check the show notes and check the description box to find links to his socials, his website, everything, all that information will be down below. Feel free to also follow the podcast on the socials. You can reach out to me on Instagram and TikTok at Southern Dot Reads. You can also find me on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube at Noah's Podcast. And as always, feel free to listen to Southern Reads wherever you get your podcasts from. I'm on all the major platforms. You can go to my website, noahspodcast.com, to learn more about where the podcast is available, as well as to follow the socials for each account. I appreciate you all so much for tuning into today's episode. I hope you all enjoyed it. Have a great rest of your day. Be safe, and I'll catch you on the next episode of Southern Reads.